When I retired 3.5 years ago, I thought I was stepping into a life of endless calm, mornings filled with quiet coffee, long walks by the lake, and afternoons with nothing but time. My name is Robert Hayes, and for 40 years I worked as a high school principal in a small Vermont town. I thought I understood life, people, and even myself. But retirement taught me more than any classroom ever could. It stripped away the noise, the schedules, the bells ringing between classes, and what it left behind was something raw and revealing. These 3.5 years didn't just change how I live, they changed how I see life, love, and the small fleeting moments that make everything worth it. The first few months of retirement were a strange mix of excitement and uncertainty. After 40 years as a high school principal in Vermont, I suddenly had time. Endless, unstructured, beautiful time. Mornings became my own. I would step onto the porch of my lake house, sip coffee, and watch the mist drift across Lake Champlain. The birds, the gentle ripple of water, the quiet rustle of leaves, it all felt like a celebration of simply being alive. There was a thrill in this freedom, a sense that I was discovering a world I had never truly noticed before. But with freedom came questions I hadn't expected. Who was I now without the routines, responsibilities, and recognition that had defined me for decades? The early days of retirement were like navigating whitewater rapids, exhilarating, chaotic, yet alive with possibilities. I tried new things, hiking the Green Mountains, volunteering at the local library, even joining a small book club at the community center. Each activity brought joy, but also reflection. I realized how much of my identity had been tied to work, and how little I had allowed myself to simply enjoy life. In quiet moments on the porch, I started reconnecting with parts of myself I had forgotten. The joy of writing short stories for my grandchildren, sketching landscapes, or walking without purpose. Retirement gave me permission to explore what I truly loved without anyone else's expectations. It wasn't about traveling to far-off places or luxurious adventures. It was about finding meaning in the everyday, in the slow, unhurried rhythm of life. By the time the first few months passed, I noticed something remarkable. This new life wasn't just exciting, it was peaceful. The thrill of novelty evolved into a steady sense of purpose, a deeper understanding that retirement was not an end, but a beginning. It was my chance to rediscover myself, to learn that life's richness often hides in the quiet, unassuming moments we usually overlook. As the first months of retirement unfolded, I began to notice something I hadn't expected. The quiet revealed not just freedom, but myself. Without the constant demands of work, the bells, the meetings, and the schedules, I had space to think, reflect, and truly feel. Who was Robert Hayes beyond the title of principal, beyond the responsibilities and the expectations of others? Slowly, I realized that much of my adult identity had been shaped not by what I loved, but by what I was supposed to do. In this new chapter, I began reconnecting with the passions I had set aside decades ago. I dusted off an old journal I had kept in college, filled with short stories and sketches, and started writing again, just for me. I picked up my neglected paints and spent afternoons trying to capture the subtle colors of the Vermont forests. These simple acts were like conversations with a part of myself I had almost forgotten. Retirement, I learned, is not just about rest. It's a journey of self-discovery. Without someone else setting my schedule, I could listen to my own instincts, follow curiosity, and even make mistakes without fear. I joined the local community center's hiking group, not for obligation, but because I wanted to explore the trails I had always admired from afar. I discovered the joy of learning something new at my own pace, and the satisfaction of pushing myself in ways that had nothing to do with achievement or recognition. By embracing this slower rhythm, I realized the beauty of fluidity in life. Each day brought something new. A sunrise painting the lake in gold, a chance conversation with a neighbor, a sudden idea for a story. Retirement wasn't a destination, it was a river, and I was finally learning to float with it, discovering who I truly was in the process. After a few months of self-discovery, I started to realize that while retirement offered immense freedom, it also came with a subtle challenge: the absence of structure. For 40 years, my life had followed rigid schedules, morning assemblies, grading papers, parent-teacher meetings. Every day had a rhythm dictated by others. Now, I had to decide how to spend each hour, and at first the choice felt overwhelming. I quickly learned that complete freedom could be as confusing as confinement. Too many empty hours made me restless, and some days I found myself wandering aimlessly, unsure of what to do next. But gradually, I discovered a balance, a personal structure that worked for me. I began keeping slow mornings sacred, drinking coffee on the porch, watching the lake awaken with the sun. Mid-morning became my exercise time, stretching, walking the trails behind my house, or lifting weights in my small home gym. The afternoons were open, a blank canvas for whatever called to me. Painting, writing, reading, or visiting the nearby town for errands or conversation. This self-made rhythm didn't feel like work, it felt like liberation. I realized that retirement didn't demand a schedule imposed by someone else, it demanded a schedule I chose for myself. The freedom to create my own structure became an unexpected joy. Some days I followed it strictly, other days I abandoned it entirely, letting spontaneity guide me. I went fishing when the light was perfect, or joined friends for a last-minute hike, all without guilt. By blending freedom with gentle structure, I felt grounded yet adventurous. I wasn't just passing time, I was intentionally shaping days that reflected who I had become, not who I had been told to be. Retirement, I learned, was not a surrender to idleness, nor a rush to fill every hour. It was the art of living deliberately, choosing what matters most and letting the rest unfold naturally.
Just when I felt I had settled into my personal rhythm, I discovered that retirement, like life itself, was never static. Change continued to arrive, often when I least expected it. One morning, a sudden snowstorm blanketed Vermont in white, canceling the hiking trip I had planned. Another day, an old friend fell ill, reminding me that not everything could be controlled. And yet, these small surprises, at first frustrating, began to teach me something profound. Flexibility is one of the greatest gifts of retirement. In my working years, change was often imposed, stressful and unwelcome. Deadlines, meetings, and unexpected challenges felt like obstacles to survival. But now, with time as my own, I could face change with curiosity rather than resistance. When plans shifted or obstacles appeared, I learned to adjust gracefully, sometimes spending the snowy afternoon sketching the frost patterns on the window instead of trudging through the trails, or visiting a friend in need rather than sticking to my schedule. Each adaptation brought a new perspective, a fresh experience that I might have missed if I had clung too tightly to routine. I also realized that embracing change required letting go of expectations. Retirement wasn't about rigid achievements or following a prescribed perfect life. It was about flow, presence, and openness to whatever came. A canceled hiking trip led me to discover a hidden creek behind my property, where the sunlight danced on ice in ways I had never noticed. A last-minute invitation to a neighbor's gathering revealed stories and laughter that became some of my most cherished memories. Gradually, I understood that retirement is less about controlling the days and more about navigating them with curiosity and grace. Life continues to move, people come and go, and circumstances shift, but within that flux lies freedom. Freedom to adapt, to notice the little joys, and to grow in ways that structured work life never allowed. Learning to ride the waves of change became one of the most rewarding lessons of my early retirement years, shaping a mindset I carried into every unfolding day. One of the most surprising discoveries of my retirement was how deeply life outside the four walls of my home could enrich me. For years, I had been confined to offices, classrooms, and meeting rooms, rarely pausing to notice the world around me. Now, each day presented an opportunity to step into sunlight, breathe fresh air, and simply exist in the rhythm of nature. What began as a simple morning walk along the lake's edge quickly became a ritual I could not imagine skipping. The crunch of leaves underfoot in the autumn, the whisper of pine trees in winter, the soft buzz of summer insects, all of it reminded me that life's beauty had been quietly waiting for me all along. I took up small projects that connected me to the land. I planted a vegetable garden behind my house, experimenting with tomatoes, zucchini, and herbs I had never tried before. Kneeling in the soil, I felt a grounding energy, a reminder that life continues in cycles, planting, growth, harvest, and that patience and care are rewarded in unexpected ways.
On some mornings, I'd simply sit by the water with a sketch pad, attempting to capture the subtle reflections of clouds on the lake. These quiet moments, which once would have seemed trivial, became the highlights of my day. Even weekends became adventures, but not in the way I had imagined during my working years. There were no extravagant trips or schedules packed with sightseeing. Instead, I found joy in canoeing the local streams, hiking hidden trails through the Green Mountains, or attending small community events. The simple act of moving my body outdoors, of feeling the sun on my face or the breeze against my skin, brought a sense of vitality I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Through these experiences, I learned that retirement could be profoundly active without being exhausting. Life outdoors became my meditation, my therapy, and my classroom all at once. I was learning again about plants, birds, seasons, and even about myself in ways that no office or meeting ever allowed. In the quiet of nature, I discovered a steady joy, a connection to the world that made each day feel purposeful and alive. As months turned into a full year of retirement, I noticed a subtle shift within myself, a quiet awakening of passions and talents I hadn't allowed time for in decades. While I had always enjoyed writing and painting, work had crowded those joys out, leaving little space for personal growth. Now, freed from schedules and obligations, I could devote hours to these pursuits without guilt or distraction. It wasn't just a hobby, it felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I had long forgotten. One chilly afternoon, I found myself sitting by the lake with a notebook, attempting to capture the stories that had been swirling in my mind for years. I wrote about small-town life, about neighbors, about sunsets, and about fleeting moments that often went unnoticed. Each word was a discovery, a bridge connecting the man I had been with the man I was becoming. Painting became the same, not for display or approval, but for the pure joy of translating what I saw and felt onto paper. These creative acts reminded me that growth doesn't stop after retirement. In fact, it can flourish when the constraints of work no longer limit you. I also began exploring new skills I had never considered before. Cooking more elaborate meals became a daily experiment, blending recipes from my childhood with inspirations from local farmers markets. I joined a photography club in the nearby town, learning to capture the changing seasons and the wildlife around my property. Each new skill added layers to my life, reminding me that curiosity is timeless. Through these experiences, I realized that retirement is not a pause in life, it's a chance to redefine who you are and how you engage with the world. By nurturing old passions and embracing new ones, I found a renewed sense of purpose. Each morning, as I stepped onto the porch and felt the crisp Vermont air, I felt alive, not just because of freedom, but because I was finally living with intention, exploring, creating, and discovering the endless possibilities of my own evolving story.
By the second year of retirement, I began noticing another unexpected gift: the depth of human connection. During my working years, I had spent so much time focused on tasks, schedules, and responsibilities that personal connections often took a back seat. Now, with time as my own, I could nurture relationships in ways that felt intentional and fulfilling. I started by reconnecting with old friends I had lost touch with. One rainy afternoon, I invited my former colleague, Margaret, over for tea. We spent hours reminiscing about our early careers, our families, and the small moments we had overlooked while rushing through life. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated with laughter, sighs, and shared wisdom. I realized that retirement had given me the luxury to truly be present with others, without distractions or agendas. But it wasn't only about old friends. I also began reaching out to neighbors and newcomers in town. I joined a local community gardening club and found joy not just in tending plants, but in exchanging stories, advice, and laughter with fellow members. These connections became a lifeline, small threads weaving together a sense of belonging I hadn't realized I had been missing. Even my family relationships shifted. With fewer work obligations, I could spend afternoons teaching my grandchildren to fish, helping my daughter with her home garden, or simply sharing stories over homemade cookies. I noticed that these moments, ordinary in appearance, carried extraordinary value. I felt the warmth of trust, the comfort of shared experience, and the quiet joy of being fully available for those I loved. Through these interactions, I understood a vital lesson. Retirement isn't just about self-discovery or personal growth. It's also about deepening connections and contributing meaningfully to the lives of others. Time, patience, and attention became gifts I could offer freely, creating bonds that enriched not just my days, but my spirit. The people around me reminded me that life is not lived in isolation. It is nurtured through shared experiences, laughter, and the simple act of showing up for one another. As I settled deeper into retirement, I realized that maintaining my health wasn't just about avoiding illness, it was about embracing vitality to truly enjoy these years. With decades of office work behind me, my body was finally free from the stress of deadlines and long hours. But I quickly learned that freedom required responsibility. I began crafting routines that balanced movement, nutrition, and rest in a way I had never been able to during my career. Mornings became sacred. I would rise early, drink a cup of coffee on the porch, and stretch while watching the sunlight shimmer across the lake. Simple walks along the shore, once overlooked, became an energizing ritual. On some days, I would venture into the nearby trails, letting the rhythm of hiking guide both my body and my mind. Exercise wasn't a chore anymore. It was a form of meditation, a way to connect with myself and the world around me. Nutrition took on new meaning as well. With time to cook thoughtfully, I experimented with local ingredients from farmers markets, learning which flavors and foods made me feel vibrant. Preparing meals became a creative outlet, a way to nourish both body and spirit. I discovered the joy of mindful eating, savoring each bite rather than rushing through meals like I had during my working years. Even rest became intentional. I allowed myself afternoon breaks, sometimes curling up with a book or simply sitting outside to feel the wind on my face. I realized that health in retirement wasn't just physical, it was mental and emotional, and giving space for all three was essential. Through these practices, I felt a renewed sense of energy and resilience. The simple act of caring for my body became a celebration of life itself. Retirement, I discovered, wasn't just about leisure or freedom, it was about creating a lifestyle that honored every part of me, ensuring that these years were not only long, but rich, vibrant, and fully lived. As I approached the third year of retirement, I found myself pausing more often, reflecting on the journey I had traveled. It wasn't just about freedom, hobbies, or connections anymore. It was about understanding the subtle, profound ways life had shifted under my feet. Sitting on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, I realized that retirement had become a mirror, showing me not just who I had been, but who I truly was. I thought about the early days, the excitement of unstructured time, the discovery of passions I had set aside for decades. Those moments were the foundation, but the real treasure lay in the quiet, everyday choices that shaped my life now. Tending my garden, sharing meals with neighbors, writing stories for my grandchildren, hiking trails with no destination in mind. Each act, seeming ordinary, carried layers of meaning. They reminded me that fulfillment was rarely dramatic. It was woven into the small, deliberate moments we often overlook. There was also a sense of perspective I had never experienced during my working years. I learned to appreciate impermanence, the way seasons changed, friendships evolved, and even my own abilities shifted. Retirement taught me to appreciate each day without clinging to the past or fearing the future. It was a gentle lesson in gratitude and presence, the kind that seeps quietly into your bones and reshapes how you see the world. Even more, I began noticing the joy in sharing this wisdom with others. Conversations with younger retirees, friends, and family became opportunities to offer insights, encouragement, and support. I realized that the most lasting gift of this chapter wasn't what I had discovered alone, but the ways those discoveries could ripple outward, inspiring and connecting others. In those quiet, reflective moments, I felt a deep sense of peace. Retirement had become more than a stage of life. It was a journey inward and outward, a close-up on the richness of existence, a chance to see clearly the life I had earned and the legacy I could leave behind. In these final months of my third year of retirement, I began to see the bigger picture, the patterns and lessons that had quietly shaped this journey. It wasn't the grand adventures or even the moments of discovery alone that defined these years. It was the cumulative effect of living intentionally, fully, and with openness. I realized that retirement had given me something priceless, the ability to pause, reflect, and savor the richness of life in a way I never could during my working years. Every morning, as I stepped onto the porch and breathed in the crisp Vermont air, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the freedom to explore my passions, for the friendships that deepened with shared stories and laughter, and for the small moments, the sunlight on the lake, the quiet rustle of leaves, the laughter of grandchildren echoing through the yard. These simple, everyday experiences had become the essence of my happiness, and I understood that fulfillment often grows quietly, far from the spotlight or applause. Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned is this: retirement isn't about slowing down or stepping aside. It's about engaging with life in a deliberate, mindful way. It's about carving out time for what truly matters, nurturing relationships, tending to your body and mind, and embracing change with curiosity rather than fear. It's about understanding that each day offers a chance to create meaning, to reconnect with yourself, and to leave a positive mark on those around you. Looking back, I see that the years of work were only one part of life's story. Retirement is another chapter, one that can be as rich, as purposeful, and as deeply rewarding as any other if approached with intention and heart. And in that realization, I've found peace, contentment, and a renewed sense of wonder at the life I have lived and continue to live. Retirement, I've discovered, is not the end. It is a journey, a close-up on life itself, full of learning, joy, and endless possibilities.